I used to love camping alone. The quiet, the isolation, it all gave me a kind of peace I couldn't find anywhere else. That was before I went to Black Hollow Pines. You won't find it on most maps. It's tucked deep in the Appalachian wilderness, past a broken trailhead and across a stream that doesn't show up on satellite images. I'd read about it on an old backpacking forum, nothing official, just a post titled "Best Place to Be Alone." I should have known better. It was dusk when I reached the clearing. The pines stood like sentinels around the site, tall and too close. The forest floor coated in thick brown needles that muffled every footstep. It was silent, not peaceful silent. Silent, no birds, no insects, just the distant wind threading through the trees like it was trying not to be heard. I set up camp anyway. By the time my fire was crackling, night had fully settled in. That when I noticed something strange. The fire was in T, casting shadows the way it should VA. The trees, the tent, even me. Our shadows looked too dark, too defined. Like something solid was moving just outside the ring of light. I told myself it was my imagination. Or maybe the way the fire danced made the shadows shift. I ate quickly, zipped up in my tent, and tried to sleep. Then came the sound. At first, it was subtle, just a faint crunch, like something stepping on dry pine needles. But then it came again, closer, crunch, pause, crunch. Something or someone was circling my tent. I held my breath. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure it would give me away. I reached slowly for the hunting knife I kept near my sleeping bag. Then, silent, I stayed frozen, every nerve on fire, until dawn's light barely started to creep through the nylon. When I finally unzipped the tent, there were no footprints, but there were marks. Thin, deep gouges in the dirt. Not human, not animal. Like something had dragged its claws just inches from the tent. I should have packed up right then, but curiosity and pride kept me there. That afternoon, I hiked further into the pines. I didn't find any animals, no birds, no squirrels, not even bugs. It was like the whole forest was dead. On my way back to camp, I noticed something that turned my blood cold. Every few feet, there were small piles of stones, perfectly balanced stacks 3 rocks each. I hadn't seen them on the way in, but now they lined the trail like markers, or warnings. Back at camp, I threw more wood on the fire and tried to convince myself I'd missed the rocks earlier. But in the pit of my stomach, I knew I hadn't. Night came fast, too fast, and with it, the noise returned. This time, there was more than one set of steps, crunching in sync, stopping at once, then moving again, closer. I sat upright, clutching the knife. The fire outside flickered wildly, like it was reacting to something unseen. Then I heard it, a whisper, not words, just breathing, close, right behind the tent wall. I lunged out of the tent, blade raised, ready to confront whoever was out there. But no one was. Instead, all around the campfire were more of those stone stacks, dozens now, and around the clearing between the pines, I saw them. Eyes, not glowing like animals' eyes. These were black, glassy, and too high up, at least 7 or 8 feet off the ground, motionless, watching. When I stepped forward, they vanished. I packed in under 5 minutes. No fire, no sleep. I hiked in the dark, adrenaline pushing me forward. Every few steps I heard them branches snapping, stones tumbling behind me, and always ... breathing. But the worst part was the trees. The pines had shifted. I swear they weren't where they'd been before. Paths that should have led out just turned in circles. I don't remember how long I walked, but I eventually collapsed from exhaustion. When I woke, it was morning and I was back at the clearing. My tent was gone, but the stone stacks were still there, now spelling something. Not words exactly, but a pattern, a spiral around where my tent had been. I ran. That time, I made it out. I don't know how. Perforce let me go, or maybe it just got bored, but I've never gone back. And here's the part that keeps me awake some nights. A few weeks later, I checked that old backpacking forum, that post, best place to be alone. It was gone. The user who posted it deleted, but someone had replied. Just one comment. It watches, but only those who wander in alone. It was supposed to be a reunion. 5 of us college friends who'd drifted apart after graduation. We chose an isolated campground in Oregon, tucked deep in the Tillamook forest. No cell signal, no ranger outpost. Just 5 tents, 1 fire, and miles of quiet, unbroken woods. We wanted to reconnect. By the second night, I wished we hadn't. The first strange thing was the air. It wasn't just quiet, it was thick, heavy, like you were walking through something invisible. We kept joking about the humidity until Danny always, the sensitive one, said, "Doesn't it feel like we're being watched?" We all laughed. He didn't. Later, while we sat around the fire drinking, the wind stopped. No breeze, just stillness. Then something tapped on the back of my tent. Tap, tap, tap. I turned, but no one was there. The others hadn't noticed. I shook it off. Probably a twig falling, a squirrel, something stupid. But I didn't sleep well. At 2:17 a.m., my check tie heard it again, rustling, crawling, not from outside, from under. Something moved beneath the ground sheet of my tent, just inches from where I lay. I froze. The weight of it shifted, then it slid away, toward the others' tents. I sat up and unzipped the door, flashlight ready. The beam caught nothing, no movement, no sound. But I didn't sleep again that night. The next morning, Jess said she heard whispering near her tent, but figured it was just me or Danny talking in our sleep. We hadn't said a word. That night, we decided to stay closer together. Instead of spreading the tents out, we moved them into a tight circle, backs to each other, safety in numbers. Right, that was our last mistake. Around midnight, the fire went out. We didn't let it just died, like the oxygen got sucked out of the air. And then the crawling began again, not just beneath one tent or of them. At once, We screamed for each other through the thin nylon walls, panicked voices overlapping. Danny shouted, "It's under me. I can feel it breathing." There were no footsteps. Whatever it was didn't walk. It dragged itself, smooth and slow, like a snake, but heavier. I grabbed my flashlight and burst out of the tent. What I saw still makes me feel cold. It wasn't a creature, not exactly. It was a shape, pale, slender. It moved on all fours, but had no knees, just long, bent limbs that scraped against the dirt. Its face, if you could call it, that was smooth and featureless. But it turned toward me, and I swear I heard it whisper my name. I ran to Jess's tent and yanked the zipper open. She was frozen, eyes wide, lips trembling but silent. Danny stumbled out next. He'd pissed himself. The others followed, and we all stood around the ashes of the fire, clutching whatever we could as a weapon, knives, sticks, even a frying pan. We didn't speak. We just listened. Scratch, drag, whisper. It circled the tents, over and over again, never revealing itself fully, just enough to make us see pieces. A limb here, a whisper there. We tried to leave. We didn't pack. We just ran, following the GPS compass on my watch to guide us back to the road. But the woods wouldn't let us. We looped in circles. Jess left a mark on a tree when we passed it again 15 minutes later. The mark was deeper, like something had clawed it wider. We didn't realize what had happened until Matt tripped and cut his hand open. Blood smeared across his palm. That's when the whispering stopped, and something laughed, low, wet, like someone gargling just behind a smile. We froze, and then we heard it right behind us. It moved fast, faster than anything crawling should. It darted between trees, flickering just outside our vision. I caught its arm in my peripheral, long, pale bones. We ran until we saw the clearing again. Our tents, our fire pit. Somehow we had returned, but everything was wrong. The tents were torn open, shredded from beneath. The fire pit was smoldering, though we hadn't touched it. And hanging from the branches above were pieces of our clothes. Shoes, a hoodie, Jess's bra. None of us said a word. We stayed together until dawn. No one slept. We didn't dare. And when the sun finally rose, the forest changed. Birds chirped. The wind moved again. We left everything behind. Just ran for the road until we found signal and called for help. A ranger picked us up 4 hours later, shaking his head. He said the site we described didn't exist anymore. The trail was blocked by a landslide last winter. No one had camped out there in nearly a year. We tried to explain. He smiled politely, took our names, told us to get some rest. We thought we were safe. But 2 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. No words, just a photo. A blurry shot of the back of my tent, taken at night from the outside. And behind it, barely visible in the shadows, was a pale, crouched figure, waiting. I've always loved exploring old maps, especially the kind that show things that don't exist anymore. Ghost towns, forgotten mines, even long-abandoned campsites. That's how I found Camp Ashwood. It was marked on a 1963 USGS topographic map, about 12 miles off-trail in the Allegheny National Forest. No roads led to it now. The newer maps didn't even show a clearing, but there it was, in faded ink. 4 cabins, 1 mess hall, and the words, "Closed in 1971. Hazardous terrain I couldn't resist." I set out in mid-September, solo, with nothing but a backpack, GPS, and an old compass. The hike was brutal, dense, forest, uneven ground, zero signal. But after 9 hours, I found it. A clearing, cabins still standing, collapsed roofs, rotting wood. But there, I stepped into the first cabin. Dust, cobwebs, a rusted bunk bed barely holding together. Something about it felt wrong, not just old, but suspended, like it hadn't decayed, just paused. Then I saw it, a name carved into the bed frame. Eddie, 1970. I took a picture, then another of the mess hall, empty, except for a long table with 6 plates, still set as if dinner had been interrupted. That's when I noticed the smell. Not rot, not mildew, burned hair. I backed out and saw footprints in the dirt, bare, small, leading from the cabins toward the woods. I followed them, slowly, against every instinct screaming at me to turn round. The tracks led to a ring of stones, what looked like an old fire pit, but the ashes were still warm, and on top of them lay a marshmallow stick, still sticky. My blood ran cold. No one else should have been out here, not recently. Then I heard a sound behind me, children laughing, but faint, distant, like it was echoing from years ago. I turned in circles, nothing, until I noticed something new, a signpost. It hadn't been there minutes before. Wood, weathered, nailed into the soil. It read, "Welcome back, Counselor Ben." That was my name. I hadn't told anyone I was coming here. The only time I'd mentioned this place was during a phone call months ago at night, joking with my brother that I'd found a ghost camp to explore. No one else knew. The sun was dipping low. I told myself I'd head out at first light. Just one night. I pitched my tent between the cabins, but sleep never came. Because as the fire burned low, I saw figures around the campfire ring. Children, just silhouettes. No eyes, no mouths. Just grinning shadows, holding sticks. None of them moved, until one turned its head. Naturally, Ferrand looked straight at me. I blinked. They vanished. I ran to my tent and zipped myself inside like a fool. That's when the knocking started. Tap, tap, tap on the tent wall. Then from the other side. Then from behind me. Voices rose outside chanting something over and over. Last night, last night, last night. It built like a song. I screamed for it to stop. I unzipped the tent and leaped out, swinging my flashlight. Nothing. Just the cabins, the trees, and that smell of burnt hair again. But one cabin now had a light on inside, a soft glow, flickering like candlelight. Ty stepped toward it, compelled. Inside, the long table was full. Children sat in their seats, faces blank like clay, staring forward. At the head of the table sat a grown man in a counselor uniform charred, black skin peeling. He turned to me slowly and smiled with no lips, and in a voice like wind through dry leaves, he whispered, "You came back late, but you'll still stay for dinner." I ran through the trees, through bramble and root. I didn't care where. I didn't look back. I tripped over a root and hit the ground hard. When I sat up, it was morning. No cabins, no signpost, no footprints, just empty forest. I staggered to my feet and checked my GPS. The location where I saw the camp, it didn't register, just unbroken forest. I hiked out in silence, back at home. I looked through the photos I took, the bunk bed, the footprints, the table, but they were gone. Every photo was just blurry green static, except one. The final picture I didn't remember taking. It was me, sitting at the head of the table, surrounded by faceless children, smiling. I didn't go out there to camp. I went to disappear. After the divorce and losing my job, I wanted to vanish into the woods for a while. Just me, a tent, and silence. I found an old hiking trail in northern Vermont untouched forest. No cell service, no people, perfect. I hiked deeper than I should, have maybe 10 miles, in until the trees grew so thick they seemed to swallow the light. I pitched my tent near a narrow creek, ate a cold can of chili, and fell asleep to the sound of running water. But around 2 a.m., I woke to something else. A voice, not shouting, not loud, just whispering. David, my name. I sat up fast, heart pounding. The woods were dark, but I could feel its something was nearby, watching, calling. David. It was coming from beyond the creek. I grabbed my flashlight and unzipped the tent. The light barely cut through the fog that had rolled in. Across the creek, I saw nothing. No footprints, no movement. But the whisper came again. David, come see. Now, I don't know what part of me thought this was a good idea, but I stepped into the freezing water and crossed. I kept telling myself it had to be someone messing with me. A lost hiker, a prank, something explainable. Then I saw it. A tree, massive, old, twisted branches like outstretched fingers, and carved into the trunk, fresh, not weathered, was my name. David. I stumbled back. I'd never been there before. No one knew I was here. There was no way anyone could have carved that, not unless something had been waiting. I ran back across the creek, tripped, soaked myself, but I didn't care. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I packed my gear and left, but the woods had changed. The trail was gone. No footprints, no broken branches, just trees all around. And then, about a mile in, I saw another one, another tree, and another name. David. Different tree, same handwriting, like it had been scratched in with claws. I started walking faster, then running. The deeper I went, the more names I saw. Not just David, Laura, Ben, Michael, hundreds, thousands, all carved into trunks. Some were high, up far, too high for anyone to reach without a ladder. And they were all fresh. No moss, no rot. Just open wounds in bark, oozing sap like blood. Then I saw a tree with 2 names on it. David plus Emily, my ex-wife. I hadn't spoken her name out loud in months. There was no way anyone could have known. No one but me. Something was watching me, learning me. I started screaming. Not words, just raw, terrified noise. The forest soaked it up like a sponge. That's when the whispers returned. Come, see, stay, be part of us. The voices weren't all the same anymore. They sounded like people I knew. My father, my old boss, a girl I went to school with who died in a car crash, and all of them whispered one thing in unison. You were always meant to be here. The trees began to creak. Not in the wind, there was no wind. They groaned, bending, twisting. I swear one leaned closer. That's when I saw the bark move. It was breathing. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsed by a moss-covered boulder. That's when I noticed it. A root coiled near my leg. It had fingernails. I jumped up, heart rattling. The boulder wasn't a boulder. It was a face, half sunken into the earth. Eyes closed, mouth agape. Another person, or what used to be one, swallowed. I screamed again, and this time the trees screamed back. It wasn't a sound, it was pressure. 1,000 silent howls in my mind, rattling behind my eyes like they were trying to get in. I don't remember how I got out. I woke up 3 days later in a ranger station. A hiker had found me curled in a fetal position at the edge of the park, dehydrated and incoherent. They said I kept whispering names in my sleep, not just mine. Thousands of them. They thought it was a mental break, PTSD, trauma from isolation. I let them believe that. It's easier than the truth. But I know I didn't imagine it, because this morning I walked past a tree in my neighborhood, a sycamore. I've passed 100 times, and carved into it, fresh and bleeding sap, was a name, David, and beneath it, in smaller letters, still watching. I never wanted to go on that hike. It was supposed to be a group trip, my brother Joel, and his 2 buddies from college. But when his friends bailed last minute, I should have taken it as a sign. Joel insisted we go anyway, said he needed the reset. He'd been acting weird, lately quiet, distant, always staring off like he was listening to something I couldn't hear. We drove out to a place called Deadwater Ridge. Creepy name, yeah, but the trail reviews online were glowing, secluded, serene, almost too glowing, honestly. 5 stars across the board, but no written comments. Just 1-word reviews like peaceful, perfect, or finally. We hiked deep into the woods. Past mile marker 7, the trail narrowed into an overgrown path that didn't match the GPS anymore. Joel insisted he remembered the way. Around dusk, we reached a ledge overlooking a wide ravine. Across the way was a second ridge identical to the one we stood on. Mirror image. Strange, but beautiful. We set up camp near the edge. overlooking the silent expanse. That's when the echo started. I wasn't speaking. Neither was Joel, but there it was. My voice, whispered, delayed, calling back from across the ravine. Joel, Joel, come back. I stared at him. Did you hear that? He nodded. But he didn't seem scared. He just whispered, it's time. That night, I woke to the sound of footsteps. Joel was gone. I found him standing at the cliff's edge, facing the opposite ridge. He was speaking to it, not yelling, just whispering. Yes, I know. I remember. Then he turned to me and said, don't answer it. Whatever happens, don't answer it. What's going on, Joel? But he just looked relieved. This is where it happened before. Before I could ask more, he collapsed, just dropped like his legs gave out. He wouldn't wake up. I dragged him back to the tent and sat there the rest of the night, listening to the echo drift across the ridge. Across the ridge only now, it was NT repeating anything we D said. It was asking questions, in my voice. Why did you follow him? Do you remember this place? Why are you still pretending you don't know? I didn't sleep. At dawn, Joel was gone again. This time, I found him across the ravine. Only there was no trail leading there. He was just there, standing on the opposite ridge, looking back at me. Too far to call out to, but the echo came anyway. It's your turn now. I turned to grab my bag, but my tent was gone. Gone completely. No footprints, no gear, no sign I had ever camped there. Just a flat patch of dirt where it had been. Then I looked back. Joel was closer, still across the ravine, but now just a few trees away from the edge. He hadn't moved. And that's when I noticed something worse. He was wearing my clothes. I shouted his name, Joel. The echo replied, Joel's gone. Then you were first. My stomach dropped. The wind picked up, but it wasn't wind. It sounded like breathing, not from around me, from inside me. Like something else was breathing with me. I ran, or tried to, but the trail had changed. It curved back toward the ledge again and again. No matter which direction I ran, I kept ending up back at the same spot, staring across the ravine. And each time, the figure on the opposite ridge was closer. Not Joel, me, or something wearing my skin. I started to scream, but the echo cut me off. We were waiting. You were the one who left. Now you're back. I covered my ears and closed my eyes, spinning in place like I could shake it off. And when I opened them, I was across the ravine, looking back at myself, standing frozen at the original camp spot. Except it wasn't me anymore. It was Joel, but not the Joel I came with. This Joel looked younger, pale, hollow-eyed, like the version of him that died here long ago. Suddenly, I remembered, not all of it, just flashes. A trip years ago, a fall, screaming, blood on rocks, Joel falling from the ledge while I screamed and reached for nothing. I never told anyone. I told myself it was a dream, a nightmare. But now I know. I left him here. And now it was my turn to stay. The thing that looked like me waved. The wind stopped. So did my breathing. And somewhere across the ravine, the echo whispered my name not as a question, but as a welcome.